Just about 2 weeks ago, Niagara Falls hosted the 8th annual Invisible Wounds Conference. It focused on mental wellness for first responders and clinicians. Two of the guest speakers from the conference, actually one MC, George Hebblethwaite and Daniel Jones, who did present at the conference, join us now. George, you've MC'd the event since 2018. How did you take this on?
Well, I was voluntold. I had just been hired in the position here at Hanover Police Service, and the chief was double booked on the day of this event in Walkerton, and he asked me to sit in for him. And it's impacted me very positively. All of us in this profession have experiences in their careers that impacts you in various ways, and the work that this group does is near and dear to my heart.
I think, Daniel, we often underestimate the stress that people as first responders, police officers, fire officials, we look at EMTs, the stress and the personal trauma that they accumulate over the years.
I think it's been said there's statistically a first responder sees 3,000 traumatic events in their lifetime when the general population sees 1 to 2. And those things stack up on you, and it creates personal trauma. It creates the need for help at times. I can tell you with my own journey, I've gone through EMDR, and I've needed it because without it, I wasn't the same person, and I wasn't the father or the husband or the friend I was supposed to be because of those traumas that we've experienced on being a first responder.
Daniel, I look at your experience as an officer, gang unit, homicide, undercover unit. You've been in some of probably the most dangerous situations.
Dangerous and traumatic, like spending time with victims of homicide or being around those homicide scenes. Undercover operations, I can tell you, was a real challenge for the family, where I would call and I'd be, I'd end up in another city for 2 weeks. And I think the other thing that we forget about is the trauma that it gives our family, specifically our spouses. And I look at my wife having to, go 2 weeks without talking to me, not knowing where I was or if I was safe. And those kind of things weigh on a family. And I think we really need to focus on mental health and wellness to make sure that those folks stay healthy.
George, besides your career with the OPP, your current role as well, you were on a UN mission in Kosovo. So again, I'm assuming you saw a lot of things that the average person doesn't experience.
Very true. Good debriefings afterwards. I know some fellows I still keep in touch with almost 2 decades later, and they're impacted by what was going on over there, and actually, unfortunately, still goes on. The situation over there, unfortunately, is not where we would like to see it or want it to be, but at some point, hopefully. But yeah, there's lots of things that you can't unsee, and like Dan said. When you do certain types of counseling, it certainly helps when you're away undercover, or I was overseas for almost a year. I got back a few times, but that's tough on the families. And when you're doing it yourself, you don't recognize what's going on and you're just working through it, but you're not the one sitting at the other end wondering.
George, you've been involved in Invisible Wounds for 5 or 6 years. Have you seen a lot of healing happening at these conferences?
I would say yes. A lot of people, if I'm watching the room, I'll see people nodding their heads. When Dan gave his presentation this year, folks were dialed in, nodding their heads, acknowledging exactly what he was expressing, and it almost like they had lived some of the things that Dan was talking about. So that type of vicarious feeling back and forth, and how you can recognize that you're not alone in your feelings and not alone in things that you've experienced, it certainly helps. You keeping it all inside does no one any good.
Daniel, are you planning to go in January and February, that first week of February, to the retreat in the Dominican that is being organized?
I would love to. I unfortunately am unable to due to my commitments, and now being a chair of a justice program in a college. I have classes that I'm teaching, but I would absolutely love to go to something like that. And it's something I talked to my wife about, saying that at some point in time, we definitely are going to plan to attend one of those, because it's nice to be around people who have experienced post-traumatic stress growth, and people that have gone through the similar things that you've gone through, because it makes you not feel alone.
George, that's key, right? To share your experiences with people who can understand, who can fathom what you've been through, and to share even further those healing journeys that these people are on.
100%. It does nothing but help.
Gentlemen, I thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to hopefully talking to you next year as well on the 9th Annual Invisible Wounds Conference. We hope to check in with you again then. Thanks again.